The crowd roars, the stage lights blaze, and the music drops. But something is wrong. Suddenly, the same four words loop relentlessly through the speakers. Girl, you know it's. Girl, you know it's. Girl, you know it's. The audience's pulse quickens. First confusion, then disbelief. On stage, Rob Pilatus's eyes dart wildly. His confident grin falters. Sweat beads on his forehead. His panic is palpable as he darts backstage mid-performance, leaving the microphone abandoned and his partner, Fab Morvan, alone under the spotlight. In the crowd, fans whisper in shock. Did you see that? Is this real? What's happening? Backstage, chaos erupts. Producers scramble. A lie that has generated millions is on the verge of unraveling on live television. You've never seen anything like this before. And this is just the beginning. Because behind those smooth moves and catchy hooks, Milli Vanilli hadn't sung a single note. Not one. They were the perfect pop illusion, a product crafted and sold to the entire world. But tonight, the illusion cracks. Who were Rob and Fab really? How far did the deception reach? And once the truth came out, what happened to the faces behind the music? This is the story of fame built on a lie, a scandal that shook the music world, and the spectacular rise and tragic fall of Milli Vanilli. Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan weren't just any musicians. They were the faces of a global phenomenon. When Milli Vanilli exploded onto the scene in the late 1980s, they were everywhere. MTV, magazine covers, and sold-out arenas. Their album, Girl, You Know It's True, soared up the charts, selling millions of copies and eventually winning them a Grammy Award for Best New Artist. Overnight, they were pop royalty. But beneath the glitz, the awards, and the adoring fans, a dark and dangerous secret brewed. The stakes were enormous. For the music industry, Milli Vanilli was the ultimate product. Show-stopping visuals, infectious beats, and an image that was pure marketing gold. For the fans, they were idols, the voices of a generation craving fresh, vibrant pop music. Yet, the duo's entire success was built on a fragile, unbelievable foundation. Neither Rob nor Fab had actually sung on their record. The real singers, talented but unknown session vocalists, remained locked away in the shadows while the charismatic duo lip-synced their way through every performance, every music video, and every public appearance. When the truth finally emerged, it wasn't just about a pop act's deception. It exposed an entire industry's obsession with image over authenticity, a systemic problem that threatened the very trust between artists and their audiences. Worldwide, fans felt betrayed. The music world was shaken to its core. How could a Grammy-winning act be a complete fraud? What did this mean for the integrity of music itself? And what would happen to Rob and Fab, the two young men caught in the eye of this hurricane? The fallout would be catastrophic, not only for Milli Vanilli, but for everyone tangled in this dizzying web of fame, fortune, and deceit. This was no ordinary scandal. This was a reckoning. But before the fame, the headlines, and the public humiliation, Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan were just two young men with an outsized dream. Rob, born in Munich to a German mother and an American soldier, had a passion for dancing and performance, but struggled to find his path. Fab, with roots in Paris and Guyana, was a charismatic performer with an unmistakable charm, but no big break was in sight. Their worlds collided in Germany in the late 1980s, where a notorious producer named Frank Farian was hunting for fresh talent. Farian, a man with a proven knack for manufacturing pop success, saw immediate potential in Rob and Fab. Their looks, their incredible stage presence, their ability to dance. But there was one major catch. Neither had the polished, powerful vocals Farian wanted for his next project. Despite this, Farian signed them. His plan was audacious. He would use Rob and Fab as the faces of the group, while keeping the real singers completely anonymous. They were the perfect frontmen, a package of visual appeal and magnetic charisma. Behind the scenes, the Milli Vanilli project took shape. A slick, shiny pop machine, perfectly engineered to capitalize on MTV's obsession with image and music video culture. To the public, it was magic. To Rob and Fab, it was their ticket out of obscurity and into the lives they had always dreamed of. But every dream has its shadows. The secret of who really sang on the records was a powder keg, just waiting for a spark. As the album dropped and the hits started rolling in, the pressure mounted, and the cracks in their perfect facade quietly began to grow. They were about to step into a whirlwind of fame and controversy that would change their lives and the music industry forever. As Milli Vanilli's hits took over the world, Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan were living the dream. Sold-out concerts, endless awards, their faces plastered everywhere. They were the undisputed kings of late 80s pop. But behind the glitter and gold, the perfect image was starting to fracture. For Rob Pilatus, the pressure was immense. Imagine having to perform perfectly every night, knowing you're not the one singing. It was a tightrope walk over a canyon of public opinion. Then came the infamous 1989 MTV performance. The backing track glitched, repeating, "Girl, you know it's," over and over again. Panic took over. Rob bolted from the stage, leaving behind a confused crowd and a tiny, unshakable seed of doubt that would soon grow into a forest of suspicion. Rumors started to fly. The whispers of lip-syncing were publicly denied, of course, but behind the scenes, the questions were getting louder. The tension was building, ready to explode. And in November 1990, the man who created it all, producer Frank Farian, lit the fuse. He held a press conference and dropped a bombshell that sent shockwaves through the entire music industry. Rob and Fab had never sung a single note on their album. The world was stunned. Suddenly, Rob and Fab were back in the spotlight, but not for their music. They were the faces of the biggest deception in pop history. Allies vanished. Critics sharpened their knives. The tabloids had a field day, with headlines screaming about betrayal and fraud. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a crisis that threatened to pull everyone down with them. And this was just the beginning of a much larger battle, a fight for truth, for their careers, and for their very survival in the unforgiving glare of the public eye. So why did they do it? Was it pure deception? The story of Milli Vanilli is more complex than that. It is a story about desperation and ambition in an industry that chews people up and spits them out. Rob and Fab weren't master criminals. They were two young, hungry artists who saw a once-in-a-lifetime chance to escape poverty and become stars. They grabbed it, even if it meant moving their lips to someone else's voice. Their motivation was survival. They were caught in a massive music machine designed to do one thing: produce hits and create marketable images. For them, it was a Faustian bargain, a deal they felt they had to make. And what about the puppet master, producer Frank Farian? For him, it was just business. He viewed music as a product to be perfectly packaged and sold to the masses. In his eyes, Rob and Fab's charisma and looks were far more valuable than their actual singing voices. Creating a facade wasn't a moral failure. It was a calculated business decision, a smart investment. This clash between image and reality perfectly captured a tension that was defining the 1990s. This was the era of MTV, where music videos could make you a global superstar overnight. The line between what was real and what was manufactured for the camera had become dangerously blurred. The story of Rob and Fab holds up a mirror to the immense pressure artists face to fit into a commercial mold. It reveals a side of the industry where raw talent can take a back seat to spectacle, and where the truth is often the first casualty in the war for success. It's a powerful cautionary tale about our culture's obsession with illusion and how quickly ambition can lead you down a path you never intended to walk. The question wasn't just about their talent, but about a system that prioritized a perfect image over authentic artistry, creating a dilemma that still echoes in the music industry today. November 1990. The day the music stopped. In that single shocking press conference, Frank Farian didn't just expose a secret, he detonated a cultural bomb. Milli Vanilli, the biggest pop act on the planet, was a complete fabrication. Rob and Fab were just the handsome faces, the dynamic dancers, miming along to vocals recorded by a group of unknown session singers. The news spread like wildfire, first through the press, then blazing across every television screen in the world. The fallout was immediate and brutal. The Grammy they had won for Best New Artist was about to be taken away, a humiliating first in the awards' history. Fans were heartbroken and furious. They felt betrayed, lied to. How could the voices they loved belong to someone else? Record stores began pulling Milli Vanilli albums from their shelves, and then came the lawsuits, an avalanche of them. Angry fans demanded their money back, claiming they were victims of fraud. Disillusioned business partners and record labels scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal. Rob and Fab were caught in the center of a hurricane. They faced a relentless media onslaught, giving tearful confessions and desperately trying to prove they really could sing. They even performed live with their own voices, but it was too little, too late. The public's trust was shattered. Their incredible rise, built on a foundation of illusion, had led to a spectacular fall, all playing out in real time for the world to see. It was a drama filled with fame, fury, and deep regret. The industry that had built them up was now tearing them down, piece by piece. Could they ever recover? Would anyone ever take them seriously as artists again? The entire music world watched, both horrified and fascinated, as the Milli Vanilli empire crumbled to dust. This wasn't just the end of a band. It was a moment of reckoning that forced the entire pop music landscape to confront its own relationship with authenticity and the very definition of what makes an artist. The moment the truth hit, Milli Vanilli's world didn't just crumble. It imploded in a way the music industry had never seen before. It was a spectacular, public freefall, and everyone was watching. Arista Records, the label that had built them into global superstars, dropped them instantly. Their multi-platinum album, Girl You Know It's True, was wiped from the label's catalog. Imagine that for a second. One of the best-selling albums of the year, suddenly deleted as if it never existed. This wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It was an act of corporate erasure. Then came the ultimate humiliation. The Recording Academy made history by rescinding their Grammy Award for Best New Artist. It was the first time in the institution's history that a Grammy had ever been revoked. The message was clear. The industry that had made them was now unmaking them. The public reaction was a firestorm. Fans who had screamed their names, bought their posters, and sung along to every word felt utterly betrayed. It wasn't just disappointment, it was fury. Lawsuits started flooding in. We're not talking about a few disgruntled fans here and there, but massive class action lawsuits representing millions of people who wanted their money back for albums, concert tickets, and merchandise. This scandal had morphed from a music industry secret into a full-blown consumer rights battle. The fans weren't just angry about the lie, they were demanding accountability. All eyes turned to Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan. The media scrutiny was relentless and brutal. They were no longer pop gods, they were pariahs. In a desperate attempt to reclaim some shred of credibility, they held a now infamous press conference. "We made a deal with the devil," they admitted, their faces a mixture of defiance and despair. They even sang for the reporters right there on the spot, trying to prove that they could sing, even if it wasn't their voices on the album. But it was too little, too late. The performance was awkward, the damage was done, and public trust was shattered beyond any hope of repair. While Rob and Fab were being publicly dismantled, another group of people was finally stepping out of the shadows, the real singers. Charles Shaw, John Davis, and Brad Howell, the voices behind the phenomenon, were finally revealed. They received a wave of delayed recognition, but their moment in the spotlight was bittersweet. Their incredible vocal talents were forever tied to, and often overshadowed by, one of the biggest scandals in music history. They were the ghost in the machine, and even when the machine broke down, they couldn't fully escape its shadow. Rob and Fab, now free from their contract but exiled from the pop world, tried to mount a comeback. They formed a new duo, simply called Rob and Fab, and released an album with their own voices. They poured their pain and frustration into the music, hoping the world would give them a second chance. But the public wasn't ready to forgive or forget. The album flopped, and the comeback stalled before it ever really began. For Rob Pilatus, this rejection was devastating. His personal struggles with addiction and run-ins with the law intensified. The pressure of his fall from grace proved to be too much, culminating in his tragic death in 1998 at the age of just 32. It was a heartbreaking end to a life that had soared so high and fallen so hard. Looking back, the biggest casualties weren't just the duo themselves. The Milli Vanilli story became a cautionary tale for the entire entertainment world. A stark warning about the intoxicating dangers of fame, the reality of exploitation, and the dark side of an industry obsessed with image over substance. This was the bitter, complicated legacy they left behind. A dazzling, meteoric rise, a crushing, catastrophic fall, and a culture that would be forever changed by their story. The Milli Vanilli scandal sent shockwaves through the music world that are still felt today. It forced everyone, artists, producers, labels, and even fans, to confront uncomfortable questions about authenticity. What does it mean to be a real artist? Where do we draw the line between performance and deception? Suddenly, the curtain had been pulled back, and nobody liked what they saw. The scandal became a blueprint for every debate about manufactured pop music that followed. It raised a new level of awareness about the immense pressures artists face, and just how far the industry is willing to go to manufacture a hit. Think about it in today's context. We live in an age of auto-tune, where vocal perfection is often digitally created. We have reality TV stars who become famous for playing a version of themselves, and social media influencers who curate every aspect of their lives for public consumption. The line between what's real and what's performance is blurrier than ever. Yet, the Milli Vanilli story remains this powerful cautionary anchor in our cultural memory. It's a stark reminder that beneath all the glitz, the glamour, and the carefully crafted images, the truth still matters. For Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan, this was so much more than just a scandal. It was a human tragedy wrapped in layers of ambition, desperation, and deception. They were two young men with dreams of stardom who got caught in a machine far bigger and more ruthless than they could have ever imagined. Their legacy isn't just about the lie, it's about the cost of that lie. It lives on in the warnings shared between aspiring artists and in the ongoing conversation about what it truly means to be authentic in the world of entertainment. Perhaps the industry is still watching, still learning, still crafting illusions in new and more sophisticated ways. But maybe, just maybe, the lessons learned from Milli Vanilli help keep us all a little more vigilant, a little more questioning. Because as their story proves so dramatically, sometimes the biggest and most enduring hit isn't a song. It's the truth. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into music history. See you in the next one.